Hi, my name is Kelvin. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to secure your Microsoft Office 365 environment with Duo. To kick things off, we'll start off with a use case that we typically see, and I'll just read this out word for word. So, an organization wants to leverage Duo multi-factor authentication to their Microsoft Office 365 tenant while having the ability to leverage additional security features such as verified push and possibly passwordless in the near future. So, how can Duo meet those requirements from that use case? Well, in a few different ways, Duo can actually meet these requirements. Now, we would generally require some more information as there is a few options available when we look at actually integrating Duo with an Office 365 environment. One of those options is to federate your domain with Duo single sign-on or Duo SSO. It's probably worth mentioning that you may benefit from using Microsoft Staged Rollout if you do go down this route, especially when testing. And this will be a great feature, as I say, for testing and being able to actually apply or subject set users to Duo's multi-factor authentication or Duo's policies while rolling this out, while making sure that any other user that's not part of, say, a stage rollout group is not going to be subject to the Duo policies. I have done a few videos around this on my YouTube channel, so if you do want to take a look a little bit more on stage rollout, please do check out my YouTube channel where you'll find those videos. The other option, which is to use Microsoft's conditional access feature, depends on whether you have P1 or P2 licensing with Microsoft. Now, if you do, then this option could benefit you if you decide that you don't want to actually federate your domain with Duo, or you simply only want to leverage Duo features for certain applications and not the whole kind of Office 365 environment. And the last option is one that I personally don't come across often, and that is the ability to add a Duo adapter to an Active Directory Federation server. This option is really required if you already have Federation in place and are using single sign-on, and you still want the ability to be able to add Duo to your existing environment. So as you can see, it's important to work with Duo to help you understand which option is the better fit for your organization. And lastly, it's probably worth mentioning that if you wish to make use of passwordless, then using Duo single sign-on is likely going to be the best way to do so moving forward. In terms of the actual Duo single sign-on piece, it's worth noting a few points here. So the first one is what we've already really touched on, and that is having to federate your domain with Duo. So basically, when you do that, all login access to your 365 environment will go via Duo for that secondary authentication. Good news is Duo SSO is available for Duo multi-factor authentication, access and beyond plans. And in order to actually leverage Duo SSO, the Microsoft Active Directory is required to be your primary authentication source. So for us to be able to, or should I say, for Duo to be able to communicate with your Active Directory server on-prem, we would make use of what we call a Duo authentication proxy. More information is available in the documentation if you're not familiar with the authentication proxy. When actually using Duo SSO, it's important to note that you must use a custom domain and not your default one, which is the onmicrosoft.com domain. It's also highly recommended that you ensure that you've got a tenant admin account to avoid potential lockout from your environment moving forward. We're going to focus, if you've not already guessed, specifically on Duo single sign-on with Microsoft's Office 365, and the steps to actually get this up and running are fairly straightforward. I've got five steps here, and we'll take a look at we'll go into more detail in terms of what's actually required in each of these steps as we get into the actual lab. But you can see we first need to start off by configuring Duo single sign-on, and then we'll look to federate the Microsoft 365 environment. And then we'll move on to the Duo application and protecting the Microsoft 365 environment via Duo. And then lastly, we'll enable the AD federation and test to make sure that Duo is now being prompted for the secondary authentication before access is granted for users accessing Office 365 environments. I've included a few useful links here. Most of them are Duo documentation and personal links, but the Duo documentation is really good. So if you want to delve a little bit more into the nitty-gritty detail of Duo single sign-on, or if you want to take a look at Active Directory's conditional access and how that works, and especially how that works with Duo, you can either go through some of my YouTube videos where I've actually done some videos around conditional access and single sign-on, or alternatively you can refer to those documents there. What we're going to do now is we're going to jump into the lab, and we're actually going to go through the steps to configure and get this all set up so you can see exactly how this will work in your environment. Okay, so in order for us to actually get started and protecting our Office 365 environment here, we first need to start off by accessing the Duo admin panel, and we're actually going to set up single sign-on first and get that working with our on-premise Active Directory. So to begin with, what we want to do is we want to go to single sign-on. And if it's the first time you're accessing this, it might look a little bit different to yourself. If you're already paying and you're not in a trial, you will be asked to create a custom subdomain. I've already created one, as you can see here, for this demo environment. Nevertheless, what we need to do is we first need to add an authentication source. So you can see that I've got one here, which is enabled, but it's not configured, as you can see. So what we'll do is we'll just we'll delete this one, and then we'll just start again so that we can see the process end to end. So first we need to disable and then delete. And then once we've done this, this is probably more like the screen that you're going to see for the first time. So we can add, in terms of authentication sources, either SAML IDPs or Active Directory. For our integration, we need to ensure that we have Active Directory on-prem. So we're going to add Active Directory here. So we'll just add that. And then we just need to essentially run through each of these steps. So we'll first start off with the authentication proxy. So as mentioned, we're going to need to make sure that we install an authentication proxy on premise, and that's going to allow us to communicate between the Active Directory server and the Duo cloud to confirm those primary credentials when entered. So you can learn more about that by clicking this link here if you want to learn more about it. Nevertheless, we'll just continue here. So what we need to do is, in terms of the authentication proxy, we'll just click on that. And now we're going to get some information that is relevant to us. So if you have not yet downloaded the authentication proxy, please look at getting that downloaded now. If you are following along, you can either download that for Windows, or you can download that for Linux, and you can also check out more documentation around the authentication proxy by clicking these links. Now, I already have the authentication proxy installed. We just need to configure it for our single sign-on. So in this particular video, we're going to focus on or from step 1.2 here. And what we essentially need to do is we need to copy this configuration here. And this configuration is going to be relevant to our authentication proxy configuration. So I'll just copy that, and what we'll do now is we'll just head over to our authentication proxy. Okay, so this is the authentication proxy. I've got some default configuration entered here. Now you can see I already have this element here, this first bit, which is basically tying in or connecting to my Active Directory with a service account from the Duo authentication proxy. So the only part we really need from the configuration here is going to be this particular part here. And this basically identifies the Duo instance that we are associating with. So what I need to do is go back here and let's just make some space there, and we'll paste that in there. So what you can see is you can see that key there, and if you paste in all of it in, then the other section is going to be this part here, which is going to ask for the service account username and password. And again, this is tying into your Active Directory instance. So in our case, I've already got a demo service account username along with a password. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that our AD client is configured so that we can communicate with our Active Directory domain controller in this instance. So my case is going to be I'll use the IP address for that Active Directory. If you're following along, go ahead and do the same for your environment. Double check that that is correct. And I'll just comment out some of the elements that we're not using here. So once we're good with the configuration, and I highly recommend you encrypt your secrets and passwords as I have done here, then we should be good to just validate that. And then once that has been validated there, we can just check the output. I just need to, in this case, just update bits and pieces here. And if you do want to know how to encrypt and decrypt your secrets and passwords, do head over to my YouTube channel because I have done a video on that as well. So with all that in place, let's just go ahead and validate that again. And this time you can see that we have a message saying validation has passed, and we have no issues here, apart from just telling me that there is a new update for the authentication proxy. That's not relevant for our demonstration today. So what I'll do now is I'll just go ahead and press save on that configuration. And then once you're done, you want to actually restart that service if it's already running. So I'll just go ahead and restart that service, and that's basically going to ensure that those configuration changes take effect. And there you go, that service has now restarted. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at just finishing off the configuration on the Duo admin panel. So we'll just head back over there real quick. So we've input all this information here. We've also made sure that it's valid as well. So what we need to do now under step 2 is connect to the authentication proxy from Duo. So what we're going to do is we're just going to generate this command here. We'll generate a new command. And this is telling us that we need to copy the following command that's been generated into a command prompt with elevated privileges on our device where we're running the authentication proxy. So we'll just copy all of that, or you can just press copy there. And if we head back over to this device and I just open command prompt here with elevated privileges, so running as administrator, I'm just going to enter that now and press enter. And we can see now that the service stopped and started, and it's been started successfully again. So we should be good now in terms of using that command. So we'll just minimize that, and we will then go back to our admin panel. And the last step here is to verify that the proxy is connected. So we'll just run that test. And you can see here that we have an output that is telling us that we are not connected to Duo. So if you do get that, we just need to verify why we're not connected to Duo in this case. So I already know the reason. We're missing, because I had to shut down the authentication proxy and I didn't save the configuration. We're missing the SSO side of the configuration here. So I'll just quickly copy that and paste that into here. Then we can save and validate that again. There we go. So if I just go ahead and validate that again, we're all good. So now I'll definitely save that configuration and I'll restart the service. So what happened before was I encrypted all the secrets and passwords. And when I did that, or when you do that, for it to actually take effect and for you to be able to see that, you do need to close down the authentication proxy manager and then reopen it. Now I did that without saving the configuration. So I lost some of my configuration. Anyway, I've done that now. The service has been restarted. So what we'll do is we'll just run that test again and let's see what we get. There we go, straight away, connected to Duo. So that's what we like to see. So once we're done there, the authentication proxy is configured with Duo. It's configured in our environment now. We can see the version corresponds to the version that we have on the authentication proxy, as you can see there on the top. What we're going to do now is we're going to move down to step 2. So this is configuring the Active Directory. So I'm just going to call this one Active Directory or 3665 demo, as this is a demo account. And then what I'm going to do is specify the domain controller. So in my environment, it's going to be this IP address followed by 389. And then we're going to specify the base DN, which I can take from my authentication proxy. And then unless you're using specific settings for your Active Directory environment, most of these can actually remain the same. So in terms of attributes we're going to be using, we have the standard email attribute as mail. If you're using a different one or want to add more attributes, then you can also do that. We're going to use username normalization in this case. So basically it's going to strip the domain or anything else before and after the username. And we're going to leave everything there under step 2 as it is, just for the purpose of this demo. Now, in terms of permitted email domains, you basically need to verify that you are the owner of the domain that you are trying to associate with. So in my case, we're using networkwizkid.com. And you can see I also have another one that's verified, but in our case for this demo we're using networkwizkid.com. So what you would do is you would copy the DNS text record value that's presented in your configuration here, and then what you would do is you go ahead and add that as a DNS text record in your DNS for your domain. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to verify that domain is actually yours. And it's just we don't want to just allow you to connect to any domain without any sort of verification. So this is just a way of verifying that that domain that you are wanting to connect with is your domain. So once that's done, which in this case it is, we don't need to do anything in this step because it's already done. But if it's not done in your environment, like I said, it is straightforward. Just copy the text record value and create a new DNS text record with that value. Lastly, what we'll do is we'll run the tests on step 4. So we'll just click run tests, and we can see here that Active Directory is correctly configured. So we're good in that sense. So let's just go ahead and save this now. And once that's saved, we'll go back to single sign-on. And what you can see here is now we have that authentication source type, which is Active Directory, configured. And we can see that we've got the authentication proxy as well. So that's essentially the first step of actually configuring this and getting this up and running. So if we just go back now and we take a look at the documentation, and the reason I wanted to point out the Duo documentation is because it's very good to have open and to follow. And moving on to the next step, more importantly, Duo actually references another document which is an external Microsoft document here. And this is all about how to add a custom domain to Microsoft 365. And if you click on that, because we do need a custom domain for this configuration, as I mentioned before, we cannot use the onmicrosoft.com. If we click on that, it's going to open up this document here, which is a good read, to be fair, and it's basically going to take you through the steps required in order to get your custom domain set up and connected as it should be as well. So this is the next step that we need to go through before we move on. So you can see this is where we start to prepare our Microsoft environment for Federation here. So essentially what we'd do is we'd run through those steps there before we kind of return back to the Duo admin panel and continue with that. So I'm just going to do that now. So following the steps on the document that I've just showed from Microsoft on how to add a custom domain, we'll just run through that now. I'm now logged into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and I've followed the steps on the document to get to where I am now. And it's asking me how I want to connect my domain. So basically, we're going to run through the steps that are required in order to set the relevant DNS records in order to connect my domain, networkwizkid.com, with this particular tenant. So we'll just continue here. And now it's going to ask me to add the following DNS records here as well. So I'll just go ahead and click add DNS records. And this is going to take me to another screen where I can simply allow Microsoft to authorize the changes, the DNS changes here. So I'm just going to press confirm on this. And then once that's done, it's going to redirect me back to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And that's it. So now you can see my domain is set up and it's complete. So it's basically just gone ahead with my authorization and added around 3 DNS records, I think we saw on the screen, to basically tie in my custom domain with the Microsoft 365. So we'll just go ahead now and press done. And what we can see now under our domains is that networkwizkid.com as a status of healthy, which is good. That's what we want to see. So if we head back to our Duo documentation now, we've essentially just run through adding our custom domain, and then we've just got some information here around some requirements here. So it just says here that Microsoft 365 requires that users are already provisioned in Microsoft 365 when an authentication attempt happens. So basically what that is saying is that the custom domain that we've added, we want to make sure that the users are already within the Microsoft tenant essentially. And if it's not, then you need to sync the users from your Active Directory to the Microsoft 365 account. So if you're following along and you've not yet synced your users to your Microsoft 365 account, then you do need to go ahead and do that. That step's already been done on my side. So I've already gone through Azure Active Directory and gone through the Azure AD Connect to make sure that my on-premise Active Directory is synced with my Azure Active Directory. So we won't be covering that in this demo. So as the instructions say, we'll move on now, and what we'll do is we'll go to creating an application in Duo. So if we just head over to our Duo instance now, and we go to applications, and we want to look for a Microsoft 365 application. So we'll click Protect Application, and then we'll type in 365. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this one here. So Microsoft 365 two-factor authentication with single sign-on hosted by Duo. So this is the one that we need. You can open that to get the documentation around this application. What we'll do though is we'll just go ahead and we'll just protect that. So it's probably worth at this point opening up the documentation to follow along as well if you don't quite catch the steps we go through in this video. We can see that the PowerShell script is not downloadable yet, and that's because that's based on the information that we enter as we proceed here. So we'll start off with the Microsoft domain name, and this is essentially going to be the custom domain that I specified. So I'm just going to put networkwizkid.com there. WS Trust configuration, that's optional. When this option is configured, users that are logging in with WS Trust will bypass Duo 2FA. So I'm just going to leave this one as disabled at the moment because we don't want to mess around with that for the purpose of this demo. You can specify custom attributes if you are using non-standard attributes. Again, we'll leave that as standard. And we now have the option to either use the universal prompt when we are prompted for two-factor authentication. Again, if you need more information on that, you can click the link there to find out more about what that is, the differences between traditional and universal. But I'm going to leave that as universal, which is the better option here. And as I always say in my videos, it's always worth creating application policies here as well for every application that you create. So we'll just go ahead now and create an application policy, and we'll create a new one for this. And one thing you might want to consider here is that if you are Federate in your domain, everybody is, as I mentioned before, going to be, everybody accessing the 365 environment will be subject to Duo two-factor authentication. So you might want to develop your policies in a way that allow some of the users or unenrolled users to be able to still access the environment without being prompted or being denied because two-factor authentication is required. So I'm just going to give this a policy name now, and I'll call this Microsoft 365 demo. And for the new user policy, as I say, if a user is unknown to Duo, allow them to pass through without two-factor authentication. So we'll just stick that on there just for the purpose of this demo. Anybody that is known to Duo and synced into Duo will be required to complete two-factor authentication. Authentication policy, we're just going to leave as it is. Authentication methods, we're going to leave as it is because we'll focus a little bit more on some of these policy elements later down the line in other videos. So I'll just create that policy now and I'll apply that policy. And now you can see I've got the application policy in place and then the global policy as a kind of catch-all. So we'll just scroll down here and we can give this a specific name. I must already have a single Microsoft 365 single sign-on configured already. So I'm just going to call this one Microsoft 365 SSO demo. We do have the ability here to let users kind of remove and add new devices and reactivate the Duo Mobile themselves, and this kind of just reduces the overhead on help desk if you do if you're kind of limited with sort of staff or just really want the end user to be able to have a seamless experience as well. But depending on your requirements, you might not want to have that on. I'm going to leave that off for now, and maybe we can explore that in a later video in time. So I'm just going to go ahead now with all that in place, and I'm just going to click save, and that's going to, oops, I need to select that domain again. I thought I did write that. Let's give that a try there. Okay, cool. So now that's saved. Now you can see that we have the PowerShell script available for download as well, which is great. Now, just before you go ahead and download that, just back on the custom attributes, you may want to check this box. Here you can see that we have some pre-populated fields here, and basically what this is doing is it's going to map the mail attribute from Duo to by default the email address, and then the source anchor attribute to the MSDS consistency GUID as well. So, you know, if you are using different ones or maybe want to change them, then, you know, do make sure that you change those as well. Just resave that again. I'll just leave that on for now. So now that we've reached this stage, what we need to do now is if we just take a quick look at the documentation and go all the way down to enable AD Federation to Microsoft 365 using Duo SSO. This is assuming that the steps above have been completed that we have not touched on because we've not kind of done anything with any additional attributes, and we already have our Azure AD Connect and synchronization between Active Directory done. So providing you have got that done and you are following along, the next step is to get onto your domain join computer where you installed the Azure Active Directory module for Windows PowerShell and the Azure AD Connect tool, because what we're going to do now is we're actually going to use the PowerShell file to paste into the PowerShell command prompt and enable Active Directory Federation to Microsoft 365 using the Duo single sign-on. So the steps are in the document if you want to follow that, but we're going to run through that now. So we'll just start off by downloading the PowerShell script here. And again, we're going to need that configuration for our domain joined machine where we have the Active Directory Connect tool, the Azure AD Connect tool that is installed, as well as the Azure Active Directory module for Windows PowerShell. So if we just head over to the machine where I have that installed, I've copied over the file here, as you can see, and rather than run the command in the documentation, I'm just going to right click and then run that with PowerShell, and let's see what we get. You can see that it's telling us that it's a Federation script. We can see the version. We can see what the script's going to do. Basically, it's going to ask us if we want to continue. So I'm just going to say yes. And then once prompted, I'm going to enter my administrator credentials for my Azure tenant. So I'm just going to do that now. So once I've entered that, you can see that it's connected, and it's just saying that this domain must be defederated first, because it was already federated in a previous demo that I've done with this specific example. So I'm just going to say yes on that, because then we can federate the same domain again. Okay, there you go. So you could see there that it's just federated itself, and the only thing with running it that way, running the PowerShell script, is that once it's complete, you can see that it's just closed down the script. It's not kind of left us with the output, so we don't know whether it's been successful or whether it's not. So it's always nice to run that command on the documentation. So if we just quickly look at the documentation, we have this command here. So once we're done, we basically get to testing now. So in terms of setting our Microsoft 365 environment up to federate it with Duo for single sign-on, we should be good and ready to test. So now we're just going to start by, let's just open an incognito, and let's go to office.com. And we're going to try log in now to make sure that we have successfully set this up correctly and we are redirected to Duo's single sign-on. So we'll just go to sign in, and I have a test user here, and we're going to say that that user is contractor network wizkid.com. And it should redirect me now. As you can see, it's redirecting me now to Duo single sign-on. So I'll just press next there, and I will enter this user's password. There we go, and this is a universal prompt here. So now it's asking me to sending me a push notification, which I've now received. So I'll approve that. There you go. And now I should be redirected and logged in successfully. And as you can see, I'm now logged into my Office 365 environment. So that's how we successfully configure and set up Duo single sign-on and implement Duo's multi-factor authentication, as well as other features which we'll look at in upcoming videos with Microsoft 365 environments. Just quickly, if we head over to our Duo environment and we click on reports here, we can see now that we have the user contractor. We can see that the results being approved, along with the timestamp and date. We can see the application. We can see the browser that's being used there, and we can see location information as well. So we're now getting that information in Duo. So we can now see all successful, failed, and attempts to access the Office 365 environment as well, which is great. And we can also make use of additional features that Duo has to offer, from authentication methods like passwordless, all the way to defining or refining the policies that are applicable to that particular application. And these are some of the things that we're going to take a look at in upcoming videos. So if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do go ahead and subscribe, because I will be uploading all my videos to that channel. And likewise, please do feel free to like this video if you have found it useful, and if you've got any questions, just drop them in the comments section and I'll do my best to answer those questions. Thank you for watching.